Good evening, Steeler fans. Welcome to another Wednesday night here on the Steel Curtain Network. And if it's Wednesday night, you know it's time for the curtain call. As always, I'm your host, Geoffrey Benedict. With me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
All right.
And I just want to say good evening to everyone that is tuned in. And welcome.
All right. Tonight we are talking about the Steelers' draft needs and which ones of them are legit and which ones of them aren't. And we're going to get to Shannon and I's opinion of what the Steelers' draft needs actually are. We got some interesting takes on some things before we get there. But I wanted to start out. I'm going to put Shannon on the spot here because I went through a whole bunch of draft sites and what they listed the Steelers' needs being for this season. I'm going to put Shannon on the spot and see if he can guess what the top needs for consensus websites is. Now, some of these were older. Most of them were from like this week or last week. So they've missed a few of the signings. And I cut off some of them. Like some of them were like older and they were saying like guard was a huge need. Obviously, that's been addressed. Some of the things like that, I kind of downgraded some of the older ones based on other signings. But I have a list of the consensus draft needs. Shannon, see if you can name and nail the number one. That we'll do this Family Feud style. If you name the wrong one, I'll tell you what spot it's in. So go ahead and try and give me the number one draft need as seen by outsiders outside of Steelers Nation.
I'm going to say offensive tackle.
You nailed it. That's number one. Number one is offensive tackle. Can you go number two?
I'll say cornerback.
Cornerback is not number two.
Surprisingly,
cornerback is number three. So you're only one off there.
Well, did they say slot receiver or just receiver?
Receiver, number two. So offensive tackle, number one. Receiver, number two. Cornerback, number three. You think you could get number four? I mean, we're getting into different territory now, but
I'll say linebacker. It can be inside or outside.
Nailed it. Inside linebacker.
Yeah.
That's number four. Outside linebacker actually falls well down the list. Number 5, safety. Number 6, defensive line. And number 7, outside linebacker or edge rusher. Now, of course, these are well before today's release of Jamir Jones. Shannon, how are you holding up with the release of Jamir Jones? You doing all right?
I'm disappointed. And I'm kind of confused and flabbergasted, to be honest, because I don't see the need. At this point of the offseason, you don't have to worry about a roster spot. You don't have to release him to open up a spot. I've seen people say, well, it's so that Bud Dupree can come back. They didn't have to release Jamir Jones, so they went ahead and signed Dupree. Dave Schofield on our Slack channel said, well, maybe Dupree is coming back and he wants 48 and he don't want to have, I said, well, maybe he's on to something, but still didn't have to release him. I figure Jamir would easily change numbers if asked. So I don't understand it. I don't know if there was I'm sure something will come to light. Maybe there was an off the field issue, or maybe he didn't like, what they're looking at doing in the draft and maybe bringing in Dupree, and he asked so he could be released early so that he might could find another roster. I'm really confused.
Yeah, he was one of the better backup edge rushers we've had. And really, even if you're adding a number 3 guy, Jamir Jones is a good number 4.
Yeah.
And normally you carry 4 outside linebackers. Right now, on the Steelers roster, we have 2 outside linebackers, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, and no one behind them. And that led me to comment as a joke in our Slack channel, in our work Slack.
I thought we had Quincy Roche too.
That's right. We do have Quincy Roche. Yes, we do. You're right. So we do have one. We have Quincy Roche. I jokingly stated in the Slack channel that the Steelers are going to switch to a 4-3 defense, put DeMarvin Leal at edge, and play TJ Watt at off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
As a joke. And a couple people were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let me think about that for a minute. That's got interesting possibilities. Now, of course, I made it as a joke because ever since Mike Tomlin came on board the Steelers in 2007, I think it was probably a solid 6-7 years there. Every single offseason, people were like, well, that's because the Steelers switched into a 4-3. Tomlin's going to switch them. They're going to run that Tampa 2 defense. Well, I looked into it a bit because we said it, and people were like, that has some interesting possibility. Terrell Austin last year was the first time he has ever been the defensive coordinator of a 3-4 defense. Before that, he has always ran a 4-3 defense. And I was like, okay, but he's been with the Steelers for 4 years. That's a pretty good number of years. That's as long as he's been a defensive coordinator anywhere else. Like that's a good number. He could run a 3-4. And I started thinking, well, what about Brian Flores? Like, what did Brian Flores do? He did something interesting his last year in Miami that I want to talk about a bit here. Because in 2021, the Miami Dolphins ran a 4-3-3-4 hybrid, full-on hybrid defense like New England likes to run. Mm-hmm. And in that defense, he had some linebackers who played off the ball in 4-3 and played edge in 3-4. So like TJ Watt sliding back and being an outside linebacker. Those guys were the guys that led the team in sacks, and they got quite a few when they were in a 4-3 look because they could go pretty much anywhere on the line and rush. It opened up a lot of possibilities. So while I'm saying it tongue-in-cheek, right, I also want to acknowledge that there's some interesting possibility there that if the Steelers wanted to adopt more of what Brian Flores did that year in Miami, mm-hmm. they have kind of the right situation at this moment to put that in place. Shannon, first off, do you find that at all interesting? And second off, is it any chance that that's actually what happens?
Well, if you remember, one of the people on Slack that was intrigued by that was me.
Yeah.
The reason being, last year was the first year that I remember the Steelers running that many different personnel packages, unique defenses, 3 safeties at times, 3 inside linebackers at times, heavy fronts against run-heavy teams. They did all this different stuff. They were unable to do what I expected them to do with a lot of zero coverage, concepts because they didn't have the cornerbacks to run that safely.
Yeah.
Especially when Watt was out, they didn't have the pass rush to get there either. So we started to see more creativity in the second half of the season when Watt come back. Well, hopefully Watt will be healthy this year. You look at the guys they've picked up. They've picked up guys, Neal, who could, play safety like an inside linebacker. You've got Watts, the young man they just signed. You got Fahuku. Mm-hmm. You've got all these guys that they're bringing in that they can do a wide variety of fronts, rotation, have a complete defensive line rotation. They've got new linebackers inside, off-ball linebackers who are attacking, really physical. Both Holcomb and
Roberts
are both excellent blitzers,
very
physical. As we kind of talked about expecting a little bit last year and it never come to pass, this year they really look like they're developing that type of personnel. But why it really struck with me is because of Leal. Yep. Leal is a guy without a position. Now, as he gets older, he might thicken up and become more of a 300, 315-pound guy who can, drop inside and pass and downs and stuff like that. But right now, he seems like he's more effective at around 285. Keeps that more quickness, and he could kind of swing in and out. If they was to do a 4-3 like you're talking about, that's perfect for him.
Yep.
Then it opens up another possibility that we talked about before we started. Drew Sanders is an off-ball linebacker from Arkansas that the Steelers have showed interest in. He's a former edge player for Alabama who transferred.
Yep.
And he's very good off the edge, rushing the passer or setting the edge. But he seems to be more effective off ball. But there's another guy that you could draft, and he would fit in seamlessly if they wanted to do that. I mean, I really like the depth.
Yeah.
That they are accumulating with this free agency. That makes the draft even more intriguing now. And as you say, they have so many different ways and options that they could go next year.
Oh, yeah. Like, I find it very intriguing. I'm going to be very interested to see. You brought up Keanu Neal. The safety room, the inside linebackers, they all look more like a Brian Flores team.
Yeah.
And to add to DeMarvin Leal, Cameron Hayward can play literally anywhere on the line. You want to do a 3-4-4-3, kind of system. You can put Cameron Hayward out at 5 tech. You can put him in at 3 tech. You can put him at 1 tech. You can even put him on the edge, because before Leal came around, the Steelers every once in a while would go 4-3, and it would be Cameron Hayward as the edge. So you have options. The Steelers have a lot of options to go with at this point. It is interesting. I think, I don't know. You didn't answer my second part of that question. How likely do you think it is to actually see that
honestly, I think it's highly likely. The reason why is because Keith Butler's no longer around, and we were concerned last year who's going to be the pass rush coordinator. Well, Brian Flores.
Front seven. Who's going to do all that?
Brian Flores is gone. So, there's going to be changes. There's no doubt there is going to be changes. Now, Aaron Curry is a new defensive mind and voice there in the room. But, we know that Tomlin and Austin have experience with Butler and with Flores. And I think we're going to see kind of a mix, in all honesty, based on the personnel they're putting together. We're going to see a little mix of what we've actually seen over the last 3 years.
Well, if you look at Aaron Curry, he is our off-ball linebacker coach. Do you know where he coached and where he played?
Football. Seattle, right?
Seattle.
Yeah.
Which is a 4-3.
Yeah.
With some aggressive looks and some aggressive things from their, off-ball linebackers. It kind of fits.
Yeah.
It kind of could work. I'm very interested to see what they do, but man, there is some look that things could. This could be that year. Steelers have been waiting for. Steeler fans have been like, "Oh, Tomlin's going to do this for 15 years." It could actually happen. Still, it's still on the table.
I can't tell you how many times people was like, "Why do you keep talking about the 3-4?" That's their base. Yeah. And they hardly ever, they're in base less than, 30-40% of the time. And I keep hearing that. Why not just not really have a base defense? You have your defense to start the game, but you could start in a 4-3. They started the game against Carolina and against the Ravens in that, what was it, 4-4?
Yeah, almost like a 5-3. It was crazy.
Yeah. So you're not limited in what you could do. And I think you're going to see that. I think we started to see creativity towards the end of last year, and I think it's going to carry over to 2023.
And also one last thing I would say is, if you went to more commonly 4-3 on like first down, right? You're not lining TJ Watt right up off of an offensive lineman. You're not asking him to just throw himself into those guys on run plays as much. You're letting him shoot gaps. You're allowing him to be more creative. You're putting him in coverage more, which I think isn't a bad thing. He's probably the Steelers' best coverage linebacker on the team right now. Probably second is Alex Highsmith. I mean, they're both really good in coverage. Like they might be, TJ Watt might be number one as far as in like linebackers in coverage for the Steelers this year for being the best. It could happen.
Do you remember watching Alex Highsmith at Charlotte? I mean, his sophomore, junior, and senior years, they moved him around. He played off ball. He did whatever. In that game against Clemson, he played 3 positions. And they moved him around. And Clemson couldn't handle him. I mean, he's that. he's not that dominant physical specimen like a Dupree, but he's so smart, so effective, and a good athlete that he went up against the best team in the nation that year, and they couldn't handle him. And that's all they talked about after the game.
Yeah.
Dabo Sweeney and all of them was like, that Highsmith kid. I mean, so, Watt could drop back. They do sometimes drop off the line and drop in the middle. And they used Highsmith and did that a couple times with him in recent seasons. There's just so many possibilities there.
Yeah, we got a super chat here. Snowman wants to know what's going to happen with Mason Rudolph. Bring him back or let him go? Shannon.
Well, they can't let him go because he's gone.
Yeah, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
That's first off. He's a free agent. They going to try and bring him back?
Well, I said so. I was sarcastic the other day on a discussion thread. I know it's hard for you to imagine me being sarcastic on a discussion thread, but I was. And I'm like, I guess he's seeing what Aaron Rodgers does and Lamar Jackson before he knows where
he's going to let those guys
to set his contract demands. Because I'm sure that there's so many teams lined up to sign Mason Rudolph. Because if you listen to a certain portion of our community, Mason Rudolph he's a starter waiting to happen, and he just never got an opportunity. But I was just being a little sarcastic, having a little fun. But I honestly, unless injuries happen during training camp and the preseason, it would not shock me. I would be shocked if Rudolph ends up as based on what I'm seeing right now and the quarterbacks coming out late in this draft, I think we'll get a shot like Duggan and the kid out of Georgia Bennett.
Yeah.
I think those guys are going to get a shot in the late rounds before Mason Rudolph will get a shot to be a quarterback 3. Now, that's just my honest opinion. I think other teams see what a lot of our community saw, including myself, and he is not a starter. He was going to have to be a clipboard holder.
Yeah, and he wasn't. He's never really. I don't know if he's ever embraced that role.
Nope.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. My thought was, if the Steelers wanted to keep Mason Rudolph, you cut Mitch Trubisky, you bring back Mason Rudolph. I think it says a lot about Mason Rudolph that they didn't. Honestly, they looked at Trubisky, and if you look at what they talked about with Trubisky and trying to keep Mitch Trubisky, was that he has leadership and he would be a good mentor for a young quarterback, and that he embraced the role. They talked about how he embraced the role and really took that on. They've never said anything like that about Mason Rudolph at any point. Has he ever been the guy who embraced that backup role, and put, help the other quarterback succeed? It's well known it wasn't Mason Rudolph Ben Roethlisberger talked to when he came to the sideline when Mason was his backup. It was Josh Dobbs.
Yeah.
Like, maybe Mason just can't do that role. Maybe he's just not that guy. And that's going to really make it hard for him to stick around the league. Yeah. I don't know if it's an ego issue or if it's just that's not how he's wired. Right? That he's not going to be good in that role. Like, I don't think Ben Roethlisberger would be particularly good in that role.
No.
Like, you come over to Ben Roethlisberger, like, dude, what are you doing that play? And he's like, I saw this guy was open, and you should have hit the throw.
Yeah.
You made the right choice. Just make a better throw. Like that's like you heard Ben Roethlisberger when they talked about, they showed one play he did, and they asked him. He was like, Marquise Pouncey was there, and you could tell he was baiting him. He's like, Ben, what would you have done on that play? He's like, I would have put it on the money. He's just like, I would have made the better throw. Like, you don't hear him ever talk, even when he's breaking down other players. You don't hear him talk about, like, I'm getting way off the track. I love talking about Ben Roethlisberger and how unique a quarterback he was. Love the dude as a quarterback, fantastic player. But we're way off here. I was going to finish the Mason Rudolph question. I don't think there's much chance he makes it back to the Steelers. I think the reason he's not making it back is they don't see him as the right guy to be behind Kenny Pickett.
I agree. Did you see this?
Mason will be MVP and prove y'all wrong. Steelers, Nathan, Australia. They love him down under. They come down and play some Australian rules football.
Hey, I think it's our buddy Marky D, ain't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's one of our guys.
Yeah, I love Marky, so that was good.
Oh. All right, well, we need to actually get on to what we're going to do here today on this show. One of the things Shannon and I are going to do is go through the positions, every position on the Steelers roster, and we're going to put them into 1 to 5 categories. And our categories are big needs. And I'm defining a big need as if the Steelers don't draft this in like top 100 picks, one of their first 4 picks, something like that, you're going to be pretty mad. Like, you're going to be like, what are they even doing? They needed to address that. Then we go to moderate needs. These are places where you sit there and say, yes, there's a position that needs to be like, we need to add somebody to this room, but it's not on the same level, right? It's like if it's a 5th round pick, we'll live with it. If you can't get that, if the draft doesn't fall right for you to get someone, we'll be like, all right, we'll live with it. Then third category is wants. Wants is like, I'd love an upgrade here, but it's cool. We could roll into the season with what we have. Okay is I'm not upset if you spend a draft pick on that position, but we don't need one. Like, that's not a draft pick. You're sitting there going, oh, good, we got a guy at that spot. But it's okay if you got him. And then my last category is nope. And if the Steelers drafted that, you'd be like, who's in charge and why aren't they fired? Like, if you draft that early, we're just no, you should never draft that early this year. That's what we're looking at. So it's either big need, a moderate need, a want, an okay, or a nope. And Shannon, we'll start right away with quarterback. Where does quarterback fall on that need list?
Well, I was just looking at, you give me a detailed description. I like that. To me, I will say it's an okay.
Okay.
Because they do need a third quarterback. And you also like to have a practice squad quarterback, so they can actually take 2 quarterbacks. If need be. But but I'm gonna say okay, because to me, if a 7th round, right now they got 2 7th round picks, nothing in the 5th or 6th. So if a 7th round guy falls, as I mentioned, Bennett, Dugan. They brought in a guy today. I seen him, but I can't remember his name. He's from BYU. And I think they've also had another quarterback in that's, going to be late round draft pick. A guy like that to have as that quarterback 3, that would make sense. But if not, you can always pick up a street free agent. Joshua Dobbs might be out there. But by the time camp's over, you know what I'm saying? And so I don't think it's anything before the 7th round at the earliest.
Okay, so I'm gonna clarify here because I forgot to mention this, but I was thinking with those first 5 picks, 1, 2, the 2 second round picks, the 3rd and the 4th, because those are all valuable picks.
Oh yeah.
So if they picked a Steeler quarterback in those first 5 picks, those 4th round picks. First, second, 3rd, or 4th. Would you be okay with that?
No, that's a no.
Okay, because I'm writing the 7th round picks as
I understand now.
Okay, so you'd put that into a nope.
In a nope.
No valuable pick spent on quarterback.
No.
Okay, I'm with you there. We agree on that one. All right, second up is running back.
Now that I would say would be an okay. If the right guy that could really be, because again, they only have 2. If you have a guy that can come in and play special teams, maybe offer something as a kick returner, and bring that dynamic aspect that they've tried to get with Anthony McFarland and guys like that down through the years, I could see maybe in that 4th round, if a guy just fell that you just like, well, I can't pass him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that, but it would just be an okay.
Especially if it was like a receiving back who had some speed.
Yes.
You could see using in like jet sweeps and putting them in the slot with 2 running back sets and be like, kind of that do-it-all player. Definitely could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it at okay too. I have both of those. So far we agree.
Yes.
So far we agree. Next up, tight end.
Oh.
Now the tight end. Well, we were both big on that being the wild card first round pick, but they brought back Gentry. They have 3 guys in that room. Where would you do tight end?
It's hard for me to say need.
Yeah.
Because they brought back Gentry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a want. It's still a want for me because I just think even with Thomas coming in and trying to help with the passing game, I just have more faith in Canada's ability to utilize the tight ends. Okay. And, I've been saying this. Thomas likes to use the H-back as well. Mm-hmm. In his offenses, heavy use of H-back. And I'm telling you, Connor Hayward is the H-back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I do not think they're bringing Derek White back. So I expect to see Connor Hayward used a lot, very versatile, H-back type position. So that would open up another spot for a tight end. And there is so many good tight ends through the first 4 rounds that I can't help it. Man, I can't give it up. I still like to see him take one in first 4 rounds.
Yep. Shannon would have a team of like 13 Heath Millers if he could.
Yes. Just cut Deontay Johnson and have all tight ends.
All of it. Just Heath Miller all over the offense. We'll run the ball every single play, and when we don't, you still can't stop us. I love it. For me, with the bringing back of Zach Gentry, I couldn't really put tight end in a one. I put it in the okay. But honestly, if they got someone that it was like a good receiving inline tight end who could both be a better receiver than Gentry and block, I'd be pumped. I'd love it. But I put that on okay. So that's the first time we're different. We were 1 off on tight ends.
Yes.
Offensive line, let's go tackle. Where do you rank offensive tackle?
I have more faith in Moore and Okorafor than I know a lot of the community. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'm okay with letting Moore try to take that 3rd year in a tackle's development is huge.
Yep.
And especially with the start he's had, and I'm not ready to, set his ceiling yet. That being said, if one of the top 3 tackles was to fall to 17, whether that's Johnson, Skoronsky, I think is how you say it, or Jones, Broderick Jones, if they fell to 17, I would be pissed. So I guess I'd have to say big need, because if it was one of them 3, I would be really pissed if they passed that up.
How would you feel if the Steelers, they've talked about this thing where the Steelers are supposedly talking to Chicago, and there's a chance the Steelers could trade up to 9. Yes. If they traded up to 9 to grab a Broderick Jones or a Paris Johnson, how would you feel?
There's only 2 guys in this draft ahead of 17 that I would trade up for. Honestly.
Okay.
And in me, it's Paris Johnson Jr., who I think is the best left tackle prospect in this class.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he can start immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Or Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. To me, he's like Sauce Gardner last year. He's a step above. This is a deep class, and there's like 3 really good guys that could go in that first round. But to me, Christian Gonzalez is ahead of the other guys. So if it was either one of those guys, I could see it. If it was, somebody said they could package 17 and 49 to move up to number 9. Now, if it's 17 and 32, I say no.
Yeah, you don't get that back.
No, but if you get 17 and 49 to move up to 9, I could see that if you get Gonzalez, who would be my choice.
Yeah.
And I have an article that is going to post soon about that very statement. Do the Steelers take cornerback or offensive tackle in the first round? And I give some history as to why I think they should take one position over the other. And you need to check that out. Because when you do some research, it's really startling.
Yeah.
It really is. It's really startling who the Steelers should take. But to me, they should take Gonzalez. And I would live with Gonzalez, or I'd be happy with Paris Johnson too if they moved up to 9. But so I would have to say big need.
All right, I'm like you. I would love if they trade up. For me, it's Paris Johnson. 17. Like, honestly, I am not sold on Broderick Jones. I could be okay with him at 17 if they trade up and got him. I wouldn't be, but I put offensive tackle into wants. I want a better offensive tackle, but I am fully. I'm really expecting. I'm perfectly fine with the Steelers rolling in with Dan Moore and Chukwuma Okorafor next year. I am on board with that. So for me, I dropped this all the way down to a want and not even a need. So that's where I have offensive tackle.
Jimmy, that is in line with my article. You need to check it out. That's
I
all
will definitely check that out. Next up, offensive guard.
Offensive guard.
Offensive guard.
Okay, that's in the nope category.
Okay, I don't think we need any further. Like
nope.
We both agree that's a dope. How about center?
Let me see what that pick is. That pick is moderate need.
Moderate need. Okay.
The reason why I say this is you've got John Michael Smith out of Minnesota, who's the top center prospect.
Yeah.
I think he could come in and start immediately for a team. Steelers don't need that.
Yeah.
He's also 24, which the Steelers don't, they want a younger guy there. Joe Tipperman out of Wisconsin is very similar to Mason Cole, but more talented.
Yeah.
He's only 22. He would be the guy that if you're looking at a center, that's who I would take. He's 22. Mason Cole could be a great mentor for him. Cole, I think, is only signed through this year, if I ain't mistaken. I thought Cole got a 2-year contract and Daniels got a 3-year contract, but I could be wrong. But that way, if Cole, they did want to move on from Cole next year, Tipperman would be ready to take over.
He does. He is signed through 2024.
Okay. So that
I understand why you're saying that because his dead cap is almost nothing next year. The Steelers can move on from him next year for almost nothing.
Yeah,
it's like
maybe that's what I remember. Yeah.
All right. So you're that at moderate need. I put that down to okay. I don't want any more interior offensive linemen. I think they're set there. But if you drafted to, like you said, center of the future, or if somehow there's, an actual upgrade guy you think could start right away, go for it. I'm okay with that. So that's okay for me. But it's not a need in my book. So on offense, the biggest one we were different on were offensive tackle and center. You are very pro the Steelers drafting offensive line. I had them down at a want for offensive tackle and okay for center. You had that at a big need and moderate need. Those were your highest offensive position. Oh, except for the one we've forgotten here that I forgot. Wide receiver. Last one on offense. Wide receiver. Where do you put that?
Big need.
Big need.
Big need. The reason I think it's a big need is looking at the offense, the offensive line, the personnel they've already brought in, Canada's offense, bringing in Thomas, what Kenny Pickett is going to excel at, and the running back talent they have in Harrison Warren. They need a slot corner who can not only receive and get yards after the catch and work that middle of the field, but they need a blocker. They need a guy who is going to be an asset in the running game. And like a Jonathan Mingo, there's another guy that they brought in I just read about. He would be excellent in say third or fourth round. He would be a perfect fit. He is Deebo Samuel's strength and size with more speed. So I would really, really like to see them. He's also got all them guys from Ole Miss, them receivers, 6'2", big, muscled up. And he's not only tough, but if you watch him, he played on a not very good offense after Matt Corral graduated. I mean, he wasn't throwing no tantrums and throwing water coolers, and he was just out there. And a lot of times he didn't catch too many balls. So he was just blocking.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he blocks like Pickens. People, if you get a chance to watch him, he blocks like Pickens, and he is stout. So I think that would be a perfect fit. So I would put that up there at big need.
Okay. I have that at a moderate need. That's my highest ranking offensive position in our tier list. Shannon, would you put offensive tackle or wide receiver first? What's your bigger need?
Bigger need is receiver.
Okay.
Just because I'm not really interested in the tackle as a big need unless it's one of those top 3 guys fall to 17. That's what we was originally talking about. Now, if we traded up to 9, I prefer Gonzalez, the cornerback.
Yeah.
But I would have to say
if they trade up to 9, that better not be a wide receiver.
Yes. So I would definitely say wide receiver is a bigger need than tackle.
Yeah.
Because it's more realistic and you can get it later in the first 4 picks.
Okay. All right. While we were talking, I realized I have not taken a break yet. So we're going to take a break here for a little bit, and then we'll be back right after this commercial. Shannon and I will return to talk about the defense right after this. And we're back. Shannon gives me the thumbs up. I did it right that time. But we, anyways, I'm terrible at this. All right. I actually remembered what I was going to say about the receivers. Because we're talking about a need a slot receiver, and there's a reason mine is discounted. All right. Are you ready to hear this, Shannon?
Yes.
The Steelers' leading player for slot receiver snaps last year gets it by a huge margin over everyone else on the team. This guy had like almost twice as much as literally anyone else in the slot. Do you care to guess who it was?
Chase Claypool.
262 slot snaps. The second highest is like 99. Right? They well under half. Beyond that, I'm going to give you 3 categories of people and where they fell. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens played 167 snaps in the slot. A lot of that was just different alignments, trips, receivers, stuff like that. All the other receivers, everyone not named Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, or George Pickens, combined for 192 snaps. Just a bit more than George Pickens and Deontay Johnson got. And those are obviously like bunch packages, things like that for Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. But 258 slot snaps, 4 less than Chase Claypool got, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was filled by the tight ends and running backs. That is not your common slot usage, right? That's not what we think of as a slot receiver. We're talking Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and Connor Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
Combined for more slot snaps than all the third wide receivers the Steelers had once Chase Claypool left. So the way we ran it the second half of the season, the way they used the slot receivers, it was much more tight ends, Connor Hayward, even running backs, more than a lot of other positions. So I'm interested to see if the Steelers do go and get a slot receiver who can be that kind of blocker. But I'm interested to see maybe they don't. And I'm a little fascinated to see what this offense would be like if they didn't.
I want to clarify one thing. We talked in the past, before last season even, about using Freiermuth, Claypool more out of the slot. And I really like putting Freiermuth outside like that, especially if they can pick up another tight end. And have him out there in the slot for those matchups. And I think it's going to be a little easier on him, the physical pounding.
Yeah.
And then Connor Hayward, if he's that H-back, you can easily drift out there and play a good bit in the slot. But I'd like to have that third guy, a receiver like Jonathan Mingo, who is more explosive and that could attack deep out of the slot. Because, they snuck Hayward deep a few times last year, and even Freiermuth, but Mingo could really burn. So I'd like to see that, because I do not think Calvin Austin III can do that at his diminutive size, not regularly. So that's why I would like the Jonathan Mingo as an option there in the because I'm really excited about what he could bring to the equation.
Also, I'll add with that, with what you're saying. If you're gonna add a receiver, he needs to be a down the field guy. He needs to be a threat, and I don't mean just speed guys. Juju Smith-Schuster had the highest catch rate and yards per target of any of Ben Roethlisberger's receivers on throws downfield.
Yeah.
Better than Mike Wallace, better than anybody, because he just caught every single one that he caught. He just caught more of them that Ben threw. And if you're throwing 20, as I said with in an analysis of George Pickens, if you're throwing the ball 20 yards downfield, yards after catch doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
Just catch the ball. It's a first down.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've gotten your chunk of yards, catch the ball, and let's keep going. If you catch a lot of passes downfield, that's a lot of value. You look at Juju Smith-Schuster, that's what he did all 2017 and 2018. He caught downfield passes at a higher rate than any other receivers.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what he did. George Pickens, that's what he did last year. Almost no yards per after the catch. He just caught him. If you get a guy who's going to be in a third receiver, you want that kind of a receiver, because Kenny Pickett was one of the more accurate downfield throwing quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Much more than his intermediate and much better than his short passes even. His deep accuracy stood out. So if the Steelers do add that receiver, I'm with Shannon here. Get somebody who can block, get somebody with some size, get somebody who can catch the ball downfield. That's what you need at that wide receiver spot. All right. Now we're moving on to defense. We've done all of the offense, and we were close. Mm-hmm. Shannon put the offensive line higher than I did, but that's mostly that's the biggest difference we had, was both offensive line positions, other than offensive guard, were higher. So looking at the defense, we're going to start with defensive tackle. Where would you rank defensive tackle, Shannon?
Oh, I'm going to say, I was putting over here, I put moderate need. But it's also kind of a want. So it was definitely a need before they signed Fahuku and Watts.
Yeah.
Because to me, Fahuku's going to come in and he's going to be that nose tackle, that old school tight blocks, sacrifice, his stats so the off-ball guys can feast. And then Watts can kind of do a little both. He can play a little end, he can play tackle, and he's giving you some of that pass rush that they need. I think somebody said that Fahuku will replace the Lulu, Watts replaces Wormley, and so we're back to where we started. And I like Maisie Smith, I like Benton, I like Gurix, or I'm saying his name wrong. There's some of them linemen that I like that could be available from the second to fourth round. So let's just stick with want. How about that?
All right. Can you predict where I put defensive tackle?
I'm going to say you put defensive tackle at big need.
Yep. That's my number one need. Every year for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm like, where is it? Give me that big guy. I love defensive tackles. That's my big need. I like the defensive line they have right now. I want it better. The gold standard for me, the ones I fell in love with, this. I go back to when Brett Kiesel was a backup.
Yeah.
Those were the defensive lines I love. Or Tyson Alualu was your fourth defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Loved that in 2019. That defensive line won games for you. That's the defensive lines I like.
Here's the question. If that's the case, who do you want?
That's the problem.
I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody in the first.
I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say that's the Steelers' job. That's not my job to find them. I'll dump that on the Steelers. But no, honestly, I looked at I came up with the definitions and I looked through and I said, which position would I be mad if the Steelers don't draft in the first 4 rounds? And it's defensive line for me. I'll be mad again. I will. I'll be angry. I'll be like, what do they think they're doing? They're all a bunch of bums. It's terrible. Give me that big, beefy, give me somebody for Cameron Hayward to be like the mentor for and to take over on that defensive line. I want the leadership of this team to be the defensive line. I want the best position to be the defensive line. I don't think it is right now. I think the edge rushers are better.
They got to get younger.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Okay. So that's my spiel on defensive tackle. Every year, first round pick, defensive tackle. That's where I stand. Hey, if they draft one this year, maybe next year drop it down to second round. Who knows?
Okay.
All right. Next up, edge rusher, outside linebacker.
Well, now, even if they'd have kept Jamir Jones, it's really going to depend on whether they get Bud Dupree or not.
Yeah.
If they get Bud Dupree, I'm going to say it's a want. If they don't get Bud Dupree, it's more of a need.
Okay.
And there is a few guys, but a lot of the guys that would really fit the Steelers are going to be gone in that first round. And so I don't want them to reach because they have a lot of needs.
Yeah.
So I don't want them to reach, but if the right guy was to fall, yes, I think that's something that is more to me as a want.
Okay, so you going want or you going moderate need there?
Again, it depends if they get Bud Dupree or not.
Okay,
and they might not sign him until after the draft.
He's not here right now. So you're going with moderate need for right now.
For now, yes.
Okay. I also put it moderate need. Exactly the thing. They got to have a number 3. I'd love for Bud Dupree to come on and just check that off. But right now he's not here. So I'm with Shannon. That's a moderate need. Inside linebacker.
It's definitely a want for me.
I know you want one.
Yes. Yeah. It's like your love of the defensive line I have for off my linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
I love Jack Campbell. There's so many guys, Drew Sanders, Dorian Williams. There's some guys that's going to be available even later. But right now, looking at what they have, I want them to finally get a young buck, a young stud to if they didn't have all these needs, this would be easy for me.
Yeah.
But where they have all these needs, I'm going to have to stick with moderate need. And I want Jack Campbell.
So I think so. You're saying if the 4th round ends and the Steelers haven't picked an inside linebacker, you're not going to be angry about it. You're going to be like, okay, I'm all right.
If they hit these other positions that is moderate need or above, I could have to live with that. Yes.
Okay. All right. See, I'm defensive tackle, man. It's I'm gonna be angry. All right. Inside linebacker for me is only one lower than Shannon. I was expecting this to be a big gap, but mine is wants. I want a better inside linebacker, but all right, if you don't get it, whatever. That's fine. The big one, here we go. Cornerback.
Big need.
Big need.
Is that
all
it?
Right.
Yeah, big need. Like I said, I want a Christian Gonzalez, but he ain't going to be there.
Yep. Everybody
else has some red flag. It's nothing big. Joey Porter Jr. is a outstanding prospect. Witherspoon, Banks. He has it all, but he just limited small sample size. Ringo, great athlete, but he has some technique problems. So, and I'm not great at evaluating cornerbacks, so I'll leave that up to the experts. I trust Terrell Austin, obviously, and them guys, but they have to get a cornerback 1 caliber guy prospect now and let Peterson work with him and mentor him. Now is the time. I've always been against them drafting a corner in the first round, but this is the year. This is the time.
And, of course, you can look at Shannon's article about whether the Steelers should draft an offensive tackle or cornerback and get more on that.
Yes.
For me, cornerback is a moderate need. And to transition into the last position we have to cover, which is safety also, if you combine both of those, the Steelers have to get one. For me, you have to get one. Either you're getting a safety that can come down and cover in the slot and can be deep. If you're getting a really high end safety, okay, then you're fine at cornerback.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I stand with this. Otherwise, you better come out of there with a cornerback. So for me, if I could combine the two, they would be a big need. But instead, I have cornerback at moderate need, and I also have safety at moderate need because I think with what they have currently built, if they want to do a lot of that 3 safety stuff, I think I still want more. I want a more dynamic dime back kind of, third guy in kind of player in a passing system. I want someone better. To me, Keanu Neal is a dime linebacker kind of position, like a Marcus Allen. He's an upgrade, obviously, on Marcus Allen, but that's not your back end guy. That's not your deep help. And I think the Steelers need another guy who can do that. Or you grab your cornerback, and then when you're a nickel and dime, Peterson can drop back there and play some zone, do some stuff, and you can bet that guy up front. Either way, that's a need. So I have both cornerback and safety at moderate need. But one of those two positions has to be addressed.
Have you seen the little cornerback? He's a slot corner out of TCU. His last name's Tomlinson.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen him. He's a little ball of muscle. He's extremely fast. You would love him because I know you like Mike Hilton as much as I did.
Oh, yeah. I love Mike Hilton.
This guy is a more talented, stockier Mike Hilton.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I say more talented, I mean athletically.
Yeah, he's more athletic.
Yeah, he's more athletic. He's faster, and he's better coverage. He's a better cover guy. The only problem would be, will he be durable like Hilton has proven?
Yeah.
But there's a guy that I think if you get a chance to look at, you'll really like him.
Yep. Sherry Richards has a comment here. I want to bring it up. In other words, you want a big slot corner? Yes. And if you want specifics, I want Terrell Edmonds back. That's what I want. Yeah. He's not coming back, and I'm not happy about it. So I want that type. I find those type of players incredibly valuable because they free up so many other people to just be better. So give me that dude. Like think Carnell Lake, right?
Oh,
how valuable was Carnell Lake? The dude was incredibly valuable because he could play corner. You need to play cornerback, okay. Terrell Edmonds was not at all at the same level of Carnell Lake, but he was the discount version. He was the the off-brand version of Carnell Lake. He was the generic one.
Carnell Lake was Pro Bowl corner and safety.
Yes. Terrell Edmonds was not
that's
Pro
Rod
Bowl
Woodson level right there, guys.
That's crazy. Right? Yeah. Rod Woodson is like the extremely high value one. That's your luxury version of it. Carnell Lake is your like really good version. And then Terrell Edmonds is like, you found him in the discount bin, but it's still good.
It's good. Yes,
it's still good. So I love those types of players. And of course, you brought up Rod Woodson. He's my favorite Steeler of all time. So it works. That's what I like. I like those types of players.
Did I give you a rating on the safety?
No, you haven't done safety yet. So let's get your take on safety and then we'll get out of here.
To me, when they brought in Neal, to me, it's a want now.
Okay.
Because they got Elijah Riley. People forget about him. He could offer them, some help there, experienced safety. So I don't think a rookie's going to get to play a lot. So they might, especially if they acquire more picks, they might wait. I'd love to have a 5th or 6th pick to look into the safety position, but I'm pretty comfortable, especially with Peterson dropping back sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if you look at the premise of this, with our first 5 picks, right? With our first 5 picks in the draft, the first 2 second rounds, a third and a fourth, I have the Steelers need to get a defensive tackle. Shannon has the Steelers need an offensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. And then outside of that, we both think an outside linebacker needs to be addressed. Shannon has inside linebacker and center, and I have defensive tackle in there. So those are our positions of needs, and they kind of do line up with the consensus needs outside of center. We had wide receiver lower, and we had outside linebacker, which they had very, very, very low. We had that higher.
Yeah.
So I guess we'd have to say most people have the Steelers' needs kind of all right, kind of pretty well pegged out with offensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback being the top 3 ones. Those are exactly Shannon's top 3. You actually agreed with the consensus.
Yes.
I'm a little different because I want that defensive tackle. But anyway, that's our show for tonight. Shannon obviously has an article coming out about or already out.
No, it's coming out. Yeah.
It's coming out on offensive tackle or cornerback, which the Steelers should draft in the first round. Make sure you check that out because those are clearly two of the big first round, ones we're looking at. Even when you talk about trading up to 9, everyone's saying, would that be for a cornerback or a tackle? Those are clearly the top 2 needs. Check out his article to see which Shannon thinks the Steelers should draft. For me, Vertex is coming. The Vertex is on the new lineman they signed, Watts, Armand Watts. Check that out. That's coming out soon. But for both of us here, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being in our live chat. Thank you for listening to this on the audio platform. Thanks for letting us come here and talk Steelers football to you. We love it. Both of us are happy with this. So thank you so much for listening. As always, have a great week. And let's go Steelers.